Gonna die on the toilet on it.
Guys like you don't die on toilets.
I think it's fine. I really do. I'm not. It's just.
Okay. Let's do it.
No. Okay, look, there's these creatures. You can turn them sideways. You can win game. But.
Okay. 1, 2.
Wait.
What?
Do we do it on 3 or do 1, 2, 3? Then do it.
Well, it's your ass, Cochise. I mean, it's up to you.
No, it's not gonna really help.
My ass, yeah. 3.
Creep.
Well, we go on 3. 1.
Come on.
What? On 3.
I would disagree massively.
3.
1, 2.
No.
Hey, before we get started, this is Anthony from UberCube. You probably know that because you're listening to the show right now. UberCube will be featured at Ravenfest in Raven Forge Games in Sanford, North Carolina on January the 31st for a Cube event.
What year is that?
It is 2026.
There we go.
Gotta be pretty clear there. You never know when they might listen to that. They'll be like, hey, I showed up in Sanford and there was no event. But yeah, so Raven Forge Games does Ravenfest every year, and they compile a massive amount of money for their local charity that supports families in need, etc. So they reached out to us. They're excited to have us, and we've got 5 of our cubes in their main event. There's going to be 2 rounds. I think it starts at like 11 a.m. Eastern and goes till around 9:30 p.m. that night. They're going to have 2 rounds into a top 8, do the Swiss point system, etc. Random cubes. It'll be fun as heck. It'll be most of our previously at CubeCon cubes, with a few that we're testing for the new CubeCon that we're going to put in, like the Black Parade and the Exile files from Sandwich. So we figured we'd get some test and some feedback before we put them in for the biggest cube event of the year.
That's right.
So that's enough of that PSA. Now we're going to go to the show. Welcome to UberCube. This is your host, Anthony Adams, a.k.a. Uber Bear. And today I'm only joined by May. Stu couldn't make it. I know he's been talking this whole time, but...
Yeah, that was kind of a weird lead-off right there.
Yeah,
I have been here.
Yeah,
this only works because of my presence.
I just thought you were in my head like Memento or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, like
Gee,
I'm
May,
looking
your
at my
sure do
tattoos.
sound different. It's me, Stu.
We took a little break. Thanks for being patient. But I don't know when we're going to actually fire this one off, so we're not going to timestamp this one because I got a couple of them we're going to do, little back-to-backs here. And we've got some special guests coming in the month of January,
right.
some surprises.
Big month.
Some surprises on the way here. So, yeah.
And needless to say, it is 2026, at least at time of recording. I don't think we'll be releasing this in 2027. Hopefully we'll be sometime in the next few weeks. But hope everyone had a happy and safe holidays, Christmas, New Year, whatever you celebrate. And it's good to be back.
It is good to be back. I'm nice and refreshed. 2 weeks off the road, going right back home 3 weeks on after we're done recording. Yeah, get back. You'll see crankier Anthony here soon. Hey, speaking of cranky, we're here to talk about cards that cranky people like to play, specifically Commander, that one that everybody goes, damn it. Wrath again? Stu, literally. What did I just played my 13th creature and you're like, 1.
What if I played a 4th board right this game?
Yeah,
everybody
blasphemous
begrudgingly
act.
throwing
We finally
on
got
the
a board that could actually finish this game. I thought
No,
that we
you don't
could...
understand. I just don't want to lose, guys. It's very important.
Yeah,
I need my board
lethal on board. Game could have ended. Let's reset. Actually, wanted to talk about Wraths, specifically in Cube. And I wanted to put UberCube's spin on this. I've got a couple of them we're going to do. We're going to do a little micro series here. I'm not going to completely announce it, but about some of the basic staples that we'll find in Cube. We've got another one we're going to do too that would be borderline a boring episode, in my opinion. It was almost like while I'm writing it, but I got thinking, we put such flavor, such context on things, plus we spice it up with a little bit of occasional brews and whatnot, that I thought we could talk about Wraths. Wraths are not the most exciting thing in Magic.
They're not. They're one of the most essential things in Magic. I think certainly if you want to support certain archetypes, kind of control is the one that always leaps out to me, right? You want to be able to deal with those pesky aggro decks, but I feel like, and it's interesting that you mentioned Commander right from the start, because I feel like there has been a bit of a negativity towards Wraths from Commander because they do prolong games. They do end up punishing players who have just, dump their whole hand, get all the creatures out there, try and push to win, and then someone Wraths, and then it's reset, and then everyone tries to build the board up again, and then 5 turns later you get another one, and then 5 turns. So it can just... It can lead to some
that
kind of
tension
grindy,
where
boring...
we heard this recently. We played a game of Commander.
Yeah.
And our good friend Nathan said, the board's getting really big. There's going to be a Wrath soon. And I'm holding a Wrath, and I stared at that Wrath for 4 turns. Because I'm going to keep letting that board getting bigger. I want that traffic jam. That's how I'm actually getting advantage. Resetting it back to 0, taking this game back to the Stone Age on these symmetrical board wipes isn't the best play. In Commander all the time. But like you said, in Cube, these are valuable because now you're controlling the pacing. You know when you want that symmetry to occur because you're stockpiled essentially, right? Your hand, your grip is ready for this explosion. You're going to come out the gate now, hopefully with real threats and or some kind of, all my stuff gets protection or indestructibility or Teferi's protection or all the above, right? You know it's coming. You, the holder of the Wrath, is prepared for it. That's why these are essential, back to what you said in the idea of control. The control player knows when this should happen. They've got their Planeswalker that's going critical mass. I'm going to blow the board up. You can't deal with this.
I want to actually highlight that in particular is about Planeswalkers. And Planeswalkers are not a new concept nowadays. They've been around for a long time, but that is certainly a way that you can develop a board presence without having to develop creatures, right? And obviously the Planeswalkers can do things. They can even make their own creatures, or they can give you card advantage, or get lands back from the graveyard, or whatever. But now you have something that persists after a board wipe, especially if you're playing against a player that has a high density of creatures in their deck, and that's the way that they want to try and win, is by turning them sideways. And that, to me, that's just made them even more powerful over the years.
Well, I want to put a pin on that because I have a counterpoint to that. But before, we're going to have a word from our sponsors, not our sponsors. First, I'm going to go ahead and just get mine out of the way. I'm having a Wicked Weed Blue Raz Burst Session Sour. How about yourself, May?
So today I am grabbing a Girl Talk Smoothie Sour from Field Day Brewing Company.
Ooh.
It's a sour ale with blueberry, raspberry, and lemon.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. So thank you to Anthony for furnishing me with this today. This is an Aslin Beer Company. It's a sour ale brewed with blackberries, blueberries, milk, sugar, and vanilla, and it's called Volcano Sauce.
Did you say assling? You're an assling?
Aslin.
Yeah?
Aislinn. I don't know. I'm drinking it.
We're really bringing out the maturity here. All right,
Yeah. He's definitely an assling. All right. So Wraths. Let's start with the OG Wrath. But I want to. You know what? You said something a minute ago. I've got this formula. I've got this script. So we can stay on point. We're going to get to that. But Stu said something a few minutes ago about Wraths with creatures turning sideways and how important they are. But it immediately sparked a thought in my head. Do you both feel that Wraths are as important now than they were before? Because now, with the advent of lower to the ground, lower mana value creatures that have ETBs and sometimes LTBs, that their opportunity cost is already spent, other than, yes, turning creatures sideways. You can't keep taking 2s. You can't keep taking 3s. You're getting hit, protecting the Planeswalker. But do you feel like Wraths are as essential as they once were in the game of Magic when creatures like the Baneslayers, etc., ruled the skies?
So
Now, you want to take
don't
this
think
one?
that they're that relevant nowadays because the pacing of the game has changed a lot, and especially if you're leaning into a lot more modern cards over the last, six-ish years, 7-ish years, right? That cards have just progressively gotten more efficient, and our board wipes have kind of kept up a little bit, but for the most part, is that unless you're trying to explicitly target like a specific deck, or you're trying to do it as a sort of top end with, like, say, I'm doing rocks into board wipe into Planeswalker type thing, right? Where it's just like, I'm going to stack up a bunch of Planeswalkers and keep your stuff on the board. It's kind of a relic from older games. Versus we just have so many things that are just resilient, that just get a lot of value, that are super efficient. And it's really hard for a lot of board wipe cores to keep up. However, I don't think that it's a completely unusable strategy.
I agree. They're not invalidated, but their time in the sun, in my opinion, has become a little less noted at this point. You can't see it because
On that subject,
creatures are resilient now.
right. So, on that subject, since we are in agreement here, what mana value do you think that wraths have to operate at in order for them to be valuable, or what kind of upsides do you think that they have to come with in order for them to be relevant?
Well, I don't. I don't think they have to have either of those things. I am shifting gears. You will find in my cubes, and we're going to go ahead and feature this one card. I'll just go ahead and talk about it. 1993 Alpha, Wrath of God. This is where the flag was staked, right? This is the card, destroy all creatures that can't be regenerated. This was what the namesake of Wrath comes from when we reference the word Wrath. And when we look at that card, which I do run in 3 of my cubes right now, it's currently at 4. There is a certain vibe, a certain feeling that curators, depends on where you're at, right? This is all contextual. Everything's contextual. Unfortunately, there's no black and white in this conversation. It's always going to be gray. But wraths in particular are so, what's the word I'm looking for? They're so game changing. They reset the board. They stone age the play. They stop it from happening. As you said, you intentionally do it. You try to find a ways to break symmetry. Sometimes you're not breaking symmetry. Sometimes you're just taking it on the chin and you're just wiping the board out to try to find an out. You're a top deck mode or whatever you're trying to do, right? Refusing to actually scoop up. Wraths, in my opinion, I have started shifting them to higher mana values because they are such a critical game piece. They change how the game development, they change how the game feels, the exchange between 1v1 especially, that's where I'm focusing now, right? Going back to that vibe that you got in Commander, everyone gets frustrated the minute you start establishing a board state. If we're doing a creature sideways, not a combo, this is actually, Wrath actually is what encourages combos in Commander, right? I mean, if you really think about the nuts and bolts of the reason why people want the games to end, because either you got a traffic jam of all these creatures gumming up the board, or someone keeps perpetually wrathing in a game of Commander. 4 players, you might have 2 wraths per player. Let's pretend they even got tutors, so make a multiplier there, right? So they're constantly resetting the board. The game is dragging out. You're trying to establish a foothold on the world, and then they blasphemous act the entire board for 1 red mana, right? The minute the game would have ended and we could have played another. Take that into a 1v1 and take that entire psychology I talked about, how it makes you feel where you keep resetting. Is it fun? Is it fun to keep restarting? I do not believe so. So I think, to answer your question, they need to either have a drawback or they need to cost more because they have that implication or that ability to make a game go into a stalemate out of boredom. Not a stalemate from, like, maybe your opponent doesn't want to do this anymore. You keep snap casting back this and keep blowing it up again, but you don't have an out. You're not winning. You're just blowing up things. That's where these wraths become divisive in Cube and other genres, right? Am I wrong?
Okay. This is a podcast about Cube and not a podcast about Commander, right? So
Yeah.
I think the Commander references are not invalid, but I don't know if I would necessarily apply, certainly not the same, like, oh, they feel bad in Cube that they can do in Commander, where games just organically take longer because you've got 4 players, right? I don't really feel like I'm ever that concerned about a Wrath in a Cube. I will say that. And I will also say this: 4 mana in 2026, as we now are, as it was in probably 25, 24, 23, 22, whatever, back to maybe 2018, 2017, is not the same as 4 mana in 93 or 98 or 99 or 2005 or whatever. That 4 mana is the dynamic of Magic has changed so much over the years. There is a lot going on in those first 2 or 3 turns. I am feeling old, but there's a lot going on. And this is from someone I wasn't playing in 1993. I remember being introduced to it in a sort of passive way, maybe in the very early 2000s. But to me, this is something that the conversation can always be context. You can always say, well, it comes down to the cube and how prevalent are your creatures and yada, yada, yada. But there is just so much more going on in Magic in the first 2 or 3 turns that I think possibly Wraths are just as important, if not more so, than they ever have been, and certainly because of the increase in power level in creatures, period. The other argument that I would make is Magic has become much more complex in the type of permanents that are high impact in a game, and you can go all the way up to the highest level powered vintage cube, right? It's not just creatures that are super strong or have the super relevant abilities. You've got powerful artifacts, you've got powerful enchantments, you've got other things that are going on that a Wrath isn't what it maybe was years ago when the game was more about the creatures, right? And this is where I actually really like the creatures and artifacts and, things that are a bit more flexible, maybe even a bit more modular. So I think there's no argument for me that the game has changed, the landscape has changed, but I don't think they're a feels bad. I think they're a necessary aspect of game design, just the same way that other interactive pieces are, and some of those feel bad pieces are. And you can go into any subreddit or Facebook group and look at some of the discourse there and how people feel about wraths and counter magic and land destruction and all that kind of stuff. But I feel like because each of those has increased in power just through game design of Wizards of the Coast over the years, that I think they're just as, if not more important than ever.
I have a question for the listeners, and this is because I didn't cube or play 1v1 Magic in the Wayback Machine, right? I did play Commander, or I played, 60 card whenever I was in the Air Force or whatever. I took this long break, right? And the way I know Wraths now, they are sideboard relegated pieces. They normally come in game 2. Once you know what your opponent has in cube, right? You know what you're dealing with. But I feel like there would have been a time back to where you would have had these Baneslayer type things, right? Didn't have haste, didn't have an ETB, didn't have an LTB, just literally had to deal with this thing now that I feel like these would have been main deckable back then. Do you feel like that assertion's wrong? Let's just say 15 years ago, 10 years ago, these would have been a lot more forward than they are now. Had cube even existed then, or for the people who were in the shadows cubing. I'll ask Usman. Usman, if you're listening, you will know this because I wanted to know where a Wrath would have landed then, right? 10, 15 years ago, right? Where would it have been in your main deck based on the card quality of the time?
I think based on the deck that you're trying to build. I mean, I think, again, the control always sticks out to me, right? I am not relegating a Wrath to a sideboard. If I'm playing a control deck, I want my Wrath of God or my Supreme Verdict. Typically, those were like the traditional, in your Azorius white-blue base decks. So to me, they were just as important back then. And I don't know why I would consider them less important necessarily now, even though, like I said, there's other permanents and there's other ways to impact and win games outside of just turning creatures sideways. But I don't feel like they're less powerful. I would even argue, like I said, I think they're just as powerful now as they were.
So if we take like a Wrath of God, a Damnation, a Day of Judgment, I'll throw in a Toxic Deluge. I've got a list of them. You could just Scryfall, destroy all creatures, and I'm even going to lump in here exile all creatures into this.
board wipe if you're looking on Scryfall.
Yeah, just board wipes in general, right? Things we're going to go into more. We're going to go into the modular type effects and all that, right? I do believe that there are enough of them now that you can now use them, kind of like we use lands as a throttle to game speed, as I kind of mentioned. These can slow down and speed up games, right? So the quantity and how you deliver these and what mana value and what their impact is and whether they have a drawback. And I would even argue that like something like Toxic Deluge doesn't have a drawback. Paying life and 1 black and 2 colorless mana isn't a drawback, not really in Modern Magic, not unless you're getting hit by an aggro player.
No,
I'm not going to put that there.
Incredibly strong.
Yeah, I'm not going to put that there.
Very good part.
But double
I know what the best part about it is? It's 3 mana.
3 mana, baby.
It's part of what I was trying to kind of tease a little bit earlier of being like, what mana value are you actually running your board wipes at? Because that's where it's going to be relevant in the turns. If you have a lot of really aggressive decks that are trying to pump out a lot of like scary creatures very early, you're wanting something to be able to just deal with them.
Yeah.
And just going and looking to Wrath of God when your opponent has like 4 creatures on board feels real good. But it comes with the important connotation that you are now having to spend your entire turn basically doing that, basically on turn 4 versus like on 3 mana. It's I can now do that and hold up mana to do other things. That comes with the opportunity costs, the more expensive that it becomes, which is why I was also trying to ask, what kind of upsides do we kind of look for if we're trying to look for a board wipe? Because for context, I fit smack dab in the middle here, where I feel like board wipes have a very important place in environments. I think that they do an important role and they do a lot of good things. However, I don't run strong board wipes in the fake cube. And that's just like the most notable cube of mine for my example. I have two major things where I have Slaughter the Strong, which is situational and it's always going to spare a total power of 4 or less, right? And then the closest second is like a Magma Phoenix. The point is that I used to have more like dedicated board wipe related slots, but I stopped using them because my environment rewards a lot of tokens, go wides, etc. that already gets pressured by the big stompy whatevers that come out. I don't need the board wipes to put that extra pressure on, right? So usually if I'm targeting a board wipe, it's because I'm targeting those kind of bigger things that my other removal options struggle with. That's where you just kind of have to ask what the role of your board wipes are doing in your environment.
Yeah, so like an interesting type thing, right? So going back to Wrath of God, and we'll lump in Damnation with this one as well, too. Destroy all creatures in play. Cannot be regenerated. Regenerated doesn't matter anymore, except like, and say, for example, in the Black Parade, where I'm now featuring Thrun the Last Troll. It's suddenly good again, right? That's that contextual relationship, but I also feel like the Black Parade is going backwards in time where these wraths are a lot more forward thinking because I am embracing these Baneslayers. This is my experiment I'm doing, right? Not to harp on that too much, but when Magic actually looked at it was okay to pay 2 white and 2 colorless or 2 black and 2 colorless.
Have you ever asked that question? Why cannot regenerate? Why?
There was enough creatures back then, like was it Spiritmonger and things like that, and the Troll Aesthetic. There were a lot of cards that had that regenerate. It was that
regenerates.
It was it was repeatable instructability where you'd pay that cost, tap that creature, take it out of whatever combat or whatever it was doing, and it wouldn't blow up, right? With the rest. So that made sense back then. I guess it was a problem then, and I understand it. It's not a problem now. They're not making that mechanic any longer, to the best of my knowledge. But
yeah, it's no longer evergreen
because it's repeatable, and they don't really want to keep seeing I can just keep preserving this creature over and over again, right? I understand that. It makes total sense. Those cards are obnoxious.
Ready for my hot take? I think regeneration can come back, but that's a discussion for another day.
Agreed.
But it's not relevant text for it to say, yes, all your things that regenerate can no longer regenerate, as much as the relevant text being destroy all creatures, right? Where most of the time, things that you're trying to get rid of, especially nowadays, they don't really have regenerate. They just kind of have value.
Yeah, they've already done their thing, right? They've already entered and something's triggered, or they've attacked or whatever. So yeah.
Well, if you guys remember,
we are not in the era of monster preservation, generally speaking,
correct,
unless you're building your environment to do so.
Yeah.
Well, if you remember, we had Justin Parnell on one of the many times we've had him on, and he was staunch about the fact that he viscerally hated 4 mana board wipes. And I understand why, right? But I'm wondering if that's a different error in Magic that made that idea happen, right? You two are arguing that something like Wrath of God still feels fine. I'm counterpointing that I've kind of started shifting away from that. I really think, and this is for people building a new cube, and again, this is all about what you're doing.
To clarify, I think it depends on the environment. Which is why I used the fake cube as an example, because like a Wrath of God in there doesn't do much for the environment outside just slow down the game more. And the game's already slow.
Yeah, so right. It's another throttling piece of a game, right? Do you want your games to end? Really should, I guess, push the idea of how many wraths you want to inject in your cube environment to begin with, right? I started thinking about this, and these numbers aren't absolute by any means, but in a 180 cube, I might have 1 wrath. That's like a real wrath. You could have other variations of wraths, like, say, an earthquake or something if you wanted to, but you don't want to, in that small of an environment, in my opinion, and I'm not saying, again, this isn't the gospel, don't run away with this, it's not the Book of Anthony here, I'm not writing it, but I do believe that like you want to limit it in that environment, make it pretty special. In 360, I try to shift around 3 of them if I can, sometimes 4, but that's probably pushing it, right? And I also try to do color distributions on my wraths. The 2 we talked about in this case were...
So you got Wrath of God in
Wrath
white,
of God and Damnation.
Damnation in black.
Typically, they're going to be around the Mardu. section of the
Yes.
color pie.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you can
Like
kind of
Blue's thing
splinter
is
off
mass
and
bouncing,
distribute
bouncing. Green's thing is mass fighting, but generally it's a Marduk's territory.
Yeah.
Yeah. I try to splinter that off the best I can, hoping that players will distribute it naturally, right? Not everybody's clumping together all the board wipes, etc. Because there was a point, like, and this was a CubeCon a couple of years back. I don't know if you were there. Bill was there. Did you come to the one where Bill was there? You did. Bill was there.
I was there.
And we were playing my two-headed giant cube, and that was an observation he made because I'm running 480 cards in that cube, playing multiple players, kind of emulating this idea almost of like Commander, if you think about it. You got two people playing against two people. And he did notice out the gate that he felt like the board wipes were a little too prevalent. Even if they were slower, two players on the same team, each one of them shouldn't have a board wipe. That's a problem, right? It allows one of them to set up and the other one to wipe. The other one to set up, the other one to wipe. I don't think that should exist in that type of environment. Stu's nodding his head here because he wants to be on that side.
I think
it depends on where you're at on that side of the table. If you're asking me while I'm winning, is this fun? Yes, but I do think there's a lot of criteria as to how many board wipes you should run in your environment, what mana value they should be at, and whether or not they should have some form of drawback outside of something like pay life. We know paying life right now is not really a drawback unless you're getting attacked viciously by an aggro deck.
So to follow your point, I think that the way that we can kind of point people to a direction of how to actually assess those and what to do about it is that you can start with like what your creatures generally do within your environment, right? So for example, in the Fey Cube does not have like super aggressive decks. You're not going to be seeing like turn 1 drop 2/1 creature, and turn 2 some other bear or whatever, into 3 into another 1 drop, into another 2 drop. You're not seeing that in the Fey Cube very often. Like that's extremely rare. You're usually seeing on curve like I'm gonna drop some kind of changeling early. I'm gonna drop maybe the Nalia, and then into the changeling outcast, I think it's called, where it just comes in and makes another changeling. And that's like our best aggressive play in this environment, where it's just, turn 4, I have a full party, and they're indestructible when they swing. That's spooky, right? But generally speaking, for an environment like that, I can assess I don't need board wipes that just kind of punish a bunch of people like trying to set up their bunch of little creatures on the board, because they're not doing an aggressive things. It's pushing out like control players or whatever. Control players are eating well, right? The things that's making it mid-range that you're having to compete with is trying to navigate your resources. The role of my creatures are to generate resources and to establish board presence. And I'm trying to reward that by saying, yes, you're getting a board wipe on 3 with Slaughter the Strong, but it comes with the caveat. It comes with a downside, right? As opposed to, say, a Toxic Deluge, which would break this environment in half, right? You can start by just asking yourself, what is the role of your creatures? What is the role of your top end? What is the thing that your board wipes are supposed to be answering? Because from there, you can ask the question, what deck wants it? So, for example, in the Fey Cube, I don't currently have this card. I don't think I'm ever going to put it in, but this is just generally a cool card for a lot of miscellaneous decks. Realm Cloak Giant is 5 white for Vigilance 7/7. Who cares? It has Venture. You can pay 3 white to destroy all non-giant creatures. It's a little expensive for a Wrath, but the fact that it comes with that upside of I also get a big creature afterwards is enough to make it really favorable for you later in the game.
Sounds really good in the Diablo if it's not in there. Yeah, this card's amazing.
Right?
I like the sound of that.
Yeah. I agree with that. So kind of brings the other point too. Having, in that case, it's kind of a board wipe on a stick, right? A way that your players can win post the board wipe or break symmetry. You mentioned that when you were talking about, what was it, Nalia?
Because it needs to nowadays.
Right? Getting the party, giving all your
destroying
creatures.
The creatures is not enough compared to the card quality that we've gotten.
Right.
And that's just my opinion.
So I think it's okay if you give your players carrots to set up for it, right? I like this idea of this giant. You said it cost a lot. You blew up the board, but now what is it, a 7/7? You're now remaining in a slower environment.
Yeah.
That's extremely impactful, and it doesn't feel like you reset the game. That feels like you're ready to close the game, right? That's a whole different choice and curation that I agree with. It's not like I'm just going to hunker down and hope to get to this game and top deck. I'm going to play this card that I'm going to talk about right now. What if we took Wrath of God and Damnation and put them into one card and then said, damn, right? this card has actually been contentious, and a lot of the different podcasts and stuff have talked about it and the complexities and the misplays. I think it's I think it's an elegant card, but I can see where they're coming from, right? Damn,
I love that card.
I like it too, but I've actually removed it from a lot of my environments outside of Powered Vintage because it pretty much makes Damnation and Wrath of God look kind of silly if they can just pay black and destroy a target creature and it can't be regenerated. As I said, they don't print that anymore. I'm looking at it right in front of my face. Or they can overload it for planes, and 2, right? And then blow up the whole board.
My counterpoint is that this can be run as like an Orzhov card, so that you can just have the option of flexibility, but you can also just draft it in mono black, you can draft it in mono white, you can draft it in Orzhov or things that let you splash into it. Yeah. Like, its flexibility really lets you show like skillful gameplay more than just I did rock into Wrath, right?
Yeah, I agree with that. What I'm trying to say is I like Damn. I think this card's cool. I think Damn looks silly, and I know it because I did this. It was in my horror cube at one point. I had Wrath of God, I had Damnation in there with the full foil treatments that have the really beautiful full art treatments that are gorgeous, and they look like going to hell or whatever, which fits my theme. And then I slapped in Damn in there too. And it didn't make those two beautiful foils I had so appealing when this card can just do more. So I actually opted to remove this in order to highlight the other two cards. That's just a personal choice I made. I didn't want to run all 3 of them. In my Power Vintage cube, I run all 3 of these. I mean, there's no reason not to. But in a thematic type cube, in the case of Uber Bear's Horror Cube, I just didn't want to keep resetting the board and blowing up the board. It was just giving, and it's so easy to overlook this card and forget that it's a Wrath when you're counting right, because it's destroyed target creature. Creature can't be regenerated. All right, cool, got it. Seems fair. Sorcery speed, double black, sure. Forgetting that it's a board wipe. That's actually happened quite a bit, or people not understanding overload and what it does, which does happen in cubes. I mean, it's part of the accessibility conversation.
I think it's pretty straightforward. I don't know if I've ever looked at this card and forgot the overload text underneath and figured that I can't use it to destroy all the creatures. But I agree with May. It's the flexibility is really what wins this for me.
I'm trying to see if there's a printing of Damn that does not have the reminder text, because there's the Secret Lair that doesn't have reminder text. Then we have the Duskmourn Borderless that doesn't have reminder text. The Modern Horizons old border printing doesn't have reminder text. And then Modern Horizons 2 Borderless doesn't have reminder text. Just as some specific examples. So there's like 3 or 4 of those cards that just don't have the reminder text, but you can solve that by just having the reminder text.
Yeah. So I kind of want to switch gears a little bit and talk about some of them. Again, we kind of highlighted them in relationship to fit the theme of your cube, right? We already kind of went over quantity, sort of, kind of. I say limit them, don't overstock them, allow creatures, even if they're obnoxious, to thrive. That's my opinion. I would say...
Especially if you have tokens.
Yeah. You're invalidating a lot of strategies. So these, back to my point and back to Justin Parnell's point, I am in the camp that if you're going to run them, and I believe you should, back to control players do want these, I just think they should be limited, and I think they should be special, and I don't necessarily believe they should all be 4 either. Some of them, or 3 or less, right? Some of them should be a little bit higher costed. Maybe give them a little nugget, like a giant 7/7 post that explosion. That actually will wrap up a game. But if you overstock these in your cube, your play experience can be generally impacted, not in a positive way, if everybody keeps going back to my commander analogy of blowing up the board and then you're getting ahead, then blowing up the board. You want the games to kind of come to a wrap and a close. So these have a place. It's kind of like it's Salt Bay Guy. This is Salt Bay Guy.
Also,
okay.
slight correction. Nalia gives that touch not indestructible. I lied.
Okay.
Lied.
I don't know. I don't know if I would
misspoke.
say that that's a little projection to say that you want... Yes, everybody wants games to end.
Yeah, for me to win.
Yes, well, exactly. Anthony doesn't want the board wipes because he just wants the creatures to turn sideways and for him to win. Yeah. But Magic isn't always about that, right? It's not always about just keeping, some kind of linear flow to it where the games end after X amount of turns, depending on how the cube design is, right? Sometimes some players enjoy those grindier matchups from time to time where you're going 12, 13 turns and it's back and forth, and maybe there's a stalemate and then there's a wrath and you're trying to build again, and there's a lot of decision and gameplay and gamesmanship between all that. So I don't know if I would necessarily argue that it even needs to be in a higher mana value. I think that can almost be irrelevant in the grand scheme of the cube. Like, who cares if you're able to board wipe on turn 4 or turn 6 or turn 8? If you're talking about it from a feels bad perspective, it's going to feel bad whenever it happens, and especially if the ability's there to do it multiple times.
I do have a specific example that I can reference that existed in limited and standard at the time. Do y'all remember in Dominaria, Goblin Chain Whirler?
Yes.
Nope,
Like,
no idea.
that card came out, and at the same time as like a bunch of, what were they, saprolings?
Oh yeah, it's a triple red
right?
one. I do remember this guy.
Yeah. But the point is that all the cool things that you could do with the saprolings or the extra tokens, there was also Ixalan that had like the Rekindling Phoenix, I think it was called, where it just lets you like bring back like a little token that lets you bring it back. Chain Whirler just comes in and says, no, your strategy is irrelevant, right? And it feels really bad, especially in a limited environment where you had saprolings, right? Where it was just like, your opponent just has that, you get punished for playing your deck. And sometimes that can feel really bad if you're trying to enable a token strategy or whatever, and you just have this early drop, whatever. And in the case of Chain Whirler, what was like the quote unquote cost was the fact that it was triple red, right? Whereas you're hammered hard into, I am playing red, at least as a dominant color. But I'm mentioning it because this is kind of like our peak example of this is an efficient board wipe. It's card positive for the most part. It shuts down a lot of strategies because it was an environment that just really punished a lot of those things, right? And when you are looking at your board wipes, you kind of have to think of it as a similar pace, right? Where a lot of these board wipes, you are paying a card in order to destroy a bunch of cards, but you don't really have anything that like sticks around at 3 or 4 mana. So when you're doing that, you are trying to make it the cost of removing your opponent's tokens or whatever's relevant to the speed that those tokens are a threat. Or else the problem is that once those tokens start doing their token thing, it just feels like, yes, I picked this deck that just loses because there's a bunch of board wipes in this environment, and that feels bad. And that's kind of my point, is that when you are looking at your board wipes, you are asking what the role is.
Real quick, this one's important. So back to your token strategy, and that's what's neat. You have so many in the cornucopia of what we have available as to us nowadays in the form of wipe. You can get ones that say like destroy all non-token creatures. You can get one that says destroy all tokens in play, destroy all artifacts, enchantments. You can be specific. It doesn't have to be just creature centric, right? And that's part of the tailoring it to your cube environment as a designer, is figuring out which ones attack your cube. I want to purposely exclude cards that attack my cube. Like, I don't want, in the case of Uberbear's Artifact Cube, destroy all artifacts in play, right? I don't want to shatter. I don't want to shatter storm
because it punishes your players for doing the thing.
Yeah,
right. But if you have an environment that's specifically token dense, and you're wanting people to do the token thing, like for example in the Fey Cube, where I have elves, I have goblins, I have humans, all these things that make tokens, right? And those 3 decks just get shut down as soon as like one good board, like multiple good board wipes start existing, right? Like there's even points where like Magma Phoenix becomes a relevant card in that environment because it's repeatable board wiping whatnot that can sweep away tokens. But you have to very explicitly be in that lane in order to get the payoff.
I think there's a cautionary tale with anything that says destroy or exile all. Like those just need to have like explicit considerations as a designer, right? When you're choosing these cards, you have to decide, is this a net positive for my environment? Not only from the efficiency and how it plays, but is this a fun exchange between me and my opponent? You can't predict the fun levels of all people, right? But you can get I'm within 85% of the happy meter here, right? Most people enjoy how this card plays out. Sure, you're in the 15%, but maybe you won't see it again. That does happen. There's no way around that. But you can choose these from what we have available to us that is a net positive for your environment. I have one that I want to talk about real quick that I think kind of fits a little bit of everything. This card, I wish I could see it more. I run this in my Fem cube, and at one point this was in Power Vintage cubes, but it didn't last very long. It was a very short stint. Bantu's Last Reckoning for 1 colorless and black. You get a sorcery. Destroy all creatures, lands you control, don't untap during your next untap step. It's hyper efficient, but it has a cost. It has a lot of cost. You could blow up the board for 3, and now you can put down your Rabble Master with your remaining red mana that you have available, right? But you don't get to untap that mana during the next. I think that's a fair costed card that has a certain amount of drawback, but it's hyper efficient. How do you feel about this card, Bantu's Last Reckoning, Stu?
I'll be honest, I'm not a huge fan of it because I think in the take the role of the board wipe, right? Because this is something that we're trying to kind of drill home as a big point of the episode, right? Don't just throw them in there because they're something that exists. Put them in there because they solve a purpose, right? So, right. Bantu's Last Reckoning, I don't like it because I want to just untap my lands and then I want to do stuff after a board wipe. So I like the fact that it is 1 less mana than your traditional 4 mana board wipes, but
the but for me is in the Fem, I had the Wrath of God that's been altered with the woman on it. It's a secret lair. And then Bantu, the character is female. I'm okay with having that existing in the environment. If I got a damnation, like I would probably swap it out. That is my restriction that I'm applying here. But this card, this art is sick, by the way. I love this card. I wish I did see it in more cubes. I do like that restriction. You know, you pay the piper here, right? Like you get to blow up the board. You get to maybe drop a 2-drop or a 3-drop, but you don't get to just start taking over. I enjoy this card very much.
I think it's fine. I really do. I'm not going to hate on it. It's just I would prefer to just have a 4 mana board wipe. Sorry, JP.
So I think the main reason that I was trying to drive home as much points as I was is because having sideboard cards can be okay if that's the experience you're trying to go for. But for a lot of environments, especially ones that are like tightly knit in the 360 or like getting 8 people, you don't want that card that you drafted to just feel like a sideboard piece. You want it to feel like it's relevant. Like if you're choosing a card on purpose, you want it to feel like that choice mattered outside of certain matchups because you don't know who you're going to be matched up against, right? And that's where it comes taking the context of the environment as much as it's the classic fallback of, well, context matters, but
there are certain, back to what you said, what was the horde that made the giant? These are my favorite type of board wipes, right? Ones that have an outcome. Either you're
Cloak Giant, by the way.
Right. So you blow up the board and you got a Planeswalker. That's your outcome. That's what you're trying to do. Whatever that might be. I don't care. That's how you're probably trying to take over the game. Or in the case of you got some resilience in your creatures, that's how you're taking over the game. But I do love cards that finish the game or set up the game for an ending, like Sunfall. I'm a huge fan of Sunfall.
Great card.
This is not, this falls underneath the Wrath category for all intents and purposes. Sunfall for 3 colorless and plains, you get a sorcery. Exile all creatures, incubate X, where X is the number of creatures exiled this way. And incubate makes these little tokens that have counters on them. You can flip them over 2 mana, and now they can attack. I love this, or they're artifact creatures, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
But I love this because, exile is kind of rough, right? It doesn't really work great for your idea of your Reanimator deck if that's what you're doing for whatever reason. But it works really good against the Reanimator deck. And it deals with a lot of problems, but it also has it has a timer on it. And I do enjoy the idea of cards that have some kind of timer attached to them, like this game is going to come to resolution soon. I don't want to keep doing that failure to launch over and over again. Agreed?
I really do think, like you keep saying, it is very context dependent.
I'm going to convince you.
I don't mind it. I don't mind the reset. I mind it less in Cube. I don't like it as much in Commander, but that's really more of a...
It digs you out. It lets you do comebacks.
It does. And
doing comebacks feels good.
Yeah, and I'm just not a fan of the super long Commander games for the most part. That's one of the reasons why I don't really play it much anymore, because I would prefer to play a very high power. I would prefer to play my Sultai combo deck against your mono red combo deck, and, the games are over in a few minutes. Like, that's the kind of Commander I want to play. I feel like I'm less concerned with that as a mechanic in a cube environment where I don't mind. Not every game is going to be board wipe after board wipe, right? Whereas the sort of the insinuation with Commander is that if I'm going to play Commander, I want to play a few games, I want to play different decks, and I want to enjoy the experience. Whereas if I'm playing cube, you are going to get different experiences every time that you draft, and even every game. So I don't mind the resets. I really don't, and I feel like they're important. Like I said, for some archetypes, they're absolutely essential, depending on the rest of the cube. If there's a lot of creatures in there, and you need that for your control players, so I don't mind it, and I don't mind for the reason why that is such a good card in Sunfall. Number one, like you say, you're exiling. Number two, you get a token that basically can also.
It's amazing in my artifact cube.
Absolutely,
it sets you up
very,
for a
very
win.
strong.
The win con has been set now, right?
Yeah, but like the other one. So obviously in the show notes we've got all the cards here, so you can go and check them out. The other one that you've got next to this one is Vanquish the Horde. So this is a sorcery. It's 6 colorless and white. Costs 1 less to cast for each creature on the battlefield. Destroy all creatures.
Yeah, that was back to my argument of when you're trying to do these slower speed cubes, like May runs with the Fey cube, or in the case of the Diablo cube, the reason why I put a pin on this type of cube, they don't want to see these 4 mana efficient type, 3 or 4, maybe even 5's too efficient, stuff like this, Vanquish the Horde, or Blasphemous Act, or these type cards, right?
Blasphemous Act is not one that I would even put in the same universe.
I don't want to run it, but at least scales with the speed of the game is what I'm trying to say, right? Maybe Blasphemous Act's not a good example, but you get the idea.
It's so dependent on the state, right? So is Vanquish the Horde. They act in the same way that they are dependent on the number of creatures for how good they're going to be. But Blasphemous Act really requires there to be a high density of creatures. I almost feel like it is like a pretty medium, like Commander kind of card. I really dislike it as a cube card, I'll be honest. And I don't really like Vanquish the Horde either, because it's a card that if you draw it early, right, they might have a couple of creatures out, but maybe they don't, and maybe you would prefer to develop your board, and now you've just got this super expensive Wrath in your hand that isn't really doing anything.
No, it's not. It's not great. The one I do love, and I don't have it in front of me right now, but like the Two-Headed Giant has the assist versions of these. Mm-hmm. I do dig that, right? Where 2 people can get some action and go, or back to the Commander type idea, or back to Two-Headed Giant type cubes. You go, hey May, we need to deal with this problem. How about you give me 5 of that mana? Or you can do like Christian. You agree to it, then you tap all your mana anyways and cast something else entirely. We lose, but you were there for that, May. But. Wow. But yeah, we love Christian.
Poor Christian gets so much shade on.
Well, he's not here. He can't defend himself. So I get to make up anything I want. But back to the point is you can tailor these to your environment, right? And May, I think you really summed it up best. You need to know what the outcome is. What are you intending to do, right? Are you creature heavy? Are you enchantment heavy? Are you artifacting heavy? Are you a nice little mixed bag of all these ideas? Planeswalker heavy, these might be problematic. For example, creatures have no way to actually get into the game. You have to really think about that as a designer, right? That's why I think it's safe to, back to my little obey guy, right? It's safe to limit these. I think you should start out with less and maybe creep up to more, then start up to more and try to go backwards, right? Because then they'll become your pet cards or emotionally attached to this idea, etc.
I think sometimes they can just be in there because they're fun. It's fun to destroy everybody's creatures.
Everybody's fun getting blown up on the board.
Yeah. Board wiping can, right? I'm going to hot take for you, Anthony. Board wiping can be very, very fun when you just watch the disappointment.
Planeswalker. It's just a really solid strategy, and it keeps it out of your sideboard, which is my main complaint with them is don't just throw things into your cube just to be sideboard fodder, because there's only so many sideboard cards that people are going to want.
I have a point to that with the sideboard. Back to the point, I like it when they're specialized. I like it when they destroy all creatures. I like it when they destroy all artifacts sometimes, right? I'm not saying all the time, but some. Or they destroy all of something. What I don't like is when they're a Swiss Army knife. Stu said he likes the modality of a modal spell to blow up the board. I avoid cards like Austere Command for 4 colorless and white. You get a sorcery. Choose to destroy all artifacts, destroy all enchantments, destroy all creatures of mana value 3 or less, or destroy all creatures of mana value 4 or greater. That's a Swiss Army knife. I mean, it costs 6 mana. I get it.
Exactly. It's a 6 mana card. Like, it's so expensive.
I looked at it for the Fem Cube. I just feel like it has the opportunity to I don't know, stall games out or make other strategies not viable. I feel strongly about these
It's
type
okay,
cards.
Anthony. It's okay to be wrong.
I
Yeah.
don't.
Join the support group for it.
Yeah, I don't know if I would say that you're right. All right, hot take. If you are invalidating an entire strategy in your cube because of one card, then maybe that there's something as a greater problem that in our midst, right? Because I don't care how much support you've got for artifacts and enchantments. If this is the one hoser for those strategies, then at the end of the day, the person who has got 6 mana and this card in their hand and is able to hose that one player that's relying on their artifacts or their enchantments or their creatures with 3 mana value, whatever. Good job. Well done. You solved my deck. Now, good luck in the next game because it's probably not going to be quite as good. And honestly, this is definitely going to be more sideboardy in the majority of games. But it can be fun. It can surely be fun when you're looking at your opponent across the board and he's like, oh man, look at all the big creatures that you've got out with your artifacts. Ha ha! And I've just got my little 2 and 3, 1 and 2 mana creatures.
I want to redact a little bit of what I said because I guess what I just said is kind of counterintuitive what I've been saying the whole time. I read this card a little bit more. You can make your 3 drops survive and make their 4 drops die.
Yeah.
That could make a game end. If you didn't choose both those modes. Okay, all right, I'll give you that one. But May, do you have any sage advice now that we're in 2026 about why wraths are amazing and should be limited extraordinarily for especially new designers and how they should think about them? Close this out. Drop a mic.
Take them slow, take them steady, figure out their role in the group. And if you are going to throw in multiple, make sure that there's a deck that actually supports them and cares about it more than just screwing over what your environment's trying to do.
Unless your environment is just about screwing people over for putting their creatures down. And sometimes just looking at that face across from across the table when they've put all those lovely creatures
Are you just taking your finger and dabbing their tears off their playmat?
Absolutely. No, I'm like, here's a shot glass. Why don't you collect those for me? And I'll sip on them.
All right. Well, thank you for listening. This has been fun. Back to the wraths. They're great. All right, Stu, take us to the socials.
All right. First of all, as always, a huge thanks to Sam and Preston and the rest of our Patreons. Only a few of you guys now. If you're listening, go check it out. Patreon.com/UberCube.
Don't make us sing any more Sarah McLachlan because we will.
Now. Come on now.
Yeah, come on.
If you want to support the show, you can.
No.
May's like, I don't know.
It's gonna happen. We're in the arms of something.
No.
No, we're not doing it. Go check out inkgaming.com/UberCube for all of your playmats, dice bags, mouse pads. Custom and large volume products are available.
And don't forget about Ravenfest. By the time we're time-stamped here, it should make sense. January 31st, Sanford, North Carolina. Raven Forge Games. We will be firing 5 of our cubes. It's going to be really cool. The link I will include in the show notes. It will have the featured cubes. It's going to be a blast. This store is amazing. It's kind of rural, little cute location, amazing breweries, amazing barbecue. Loved it.
Sanford is happening.
It's actually a cool little town.
It's going to happen.
It's about an hour from us.
It's the next blow up here in North Carolina.
Better get some real estate.
Isn't saying a whole lot. As always, on the socials, ubercubemtgpodcast.bsky.social. You can find us at Twitter at ubercubemtgpod. If you've got a longer question or comment about this episode or any episode or Anthony's choice of wraths, then you can reach us at ubercubemtgpodcast@gmail.com. And as always, come hang out with us on our Discord. Lots of cool combos.
And then other than that, we're going to say the thing that we always say here, Ubercube, is...
Destroy all creatures. They cannot be regenerated.
Can't be regenerated.
Womp womp.
Happy cubing.